Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CISO Corner podcast. I'm Dane Dittamore with DataBank, and our subject matter expert today is DataBank's Chief Information Security Officer, Mark Houpt. Hi, Mark.
Good day. Good morning, Dane. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I thought you were going to say great, Dane, and
Well,
yes, it is a great day.
great, Dane. Then you could bark back at me. How's that? I've been barked at before.
Today's topic is hackers have demanded ransom. Now what? But before we get into that question, let's talk about the circumstances that make an IT environment more susceptible to a ransomware attack. Mark, can you kind of give us a little background?
Yeah, it's simple. In my experience, now this is not in every case, but vast majority of the experiences that I have out there with ransomware, the one thing that makes our customers and makes other entities susceptible to ransomware is lack of simple security hygiene. And most often it is not patching your servers. So right at the beginning of COVID, we had a real situation, as an example, that people are being pulled out of their offices, they're being left at home, and customers who would normally be patching their applications were reluctant to do so because they couldn't get into the offices in the event that a system, an application went down. They weren't able to get in to make the hands-on changes right on site, and so they allowed patching to lag a little bit. And as a result of that, we saw a massive spike in DDoS attacks and ransomware that occurred throughout the world for about 3 or 4 months, from March of 2020 until about June, July of 2020. So the basic hygiene things, patching, making sure your applications are up to date, and doing the hardening is what repels the attackers. Because like any type of thief, any type of situation, even at your own home, even at a business, the attackers are going to go through the most easily accessible route to attack. And if you simply have your doors locked on your car, or your doors locked on your business, and they rattle that door to see if it's open. If it's open, they're going to go through it. If it's not, they're going to move on to the next one and see if it's open. And so what we want to do with this basic security hygiene is make sure that the doors are locked, so as they walk through and rattle it, they're going to be repelled.
Understood. Well, have you seen situations where an IT department seems to be doing everything right, but still gets hacked?
Yeah, there's certainly those cases, and those are typically hacktivist type of situations where that particular entity is targeted specifically for either an action that they are taking or an inaction that they are not doing. Okay, and what I mean from that perspective is usually from a social or government type of perspective. If there's an organization out there whose role it is to promote social awareness on different topics, then they're going to be a potentially a more of an attack surface, if you will. They're going to be kind of a magnet for the attackers to come after. And those attackers are not just splattering the internet looking for that loose door handle. They are deliberately attacking that organization with the purpose of either taking them down or having some sort of negative impact upon them. So they're going to use alternative methods to attack. So if they walk up and the door is not ajar, it's locked, they're going to potentially break the glass in order to get in. They're going to brute force their way in some other fashion. So even though there are companies out there that have been attacked that are doing everything correctly, it's typically because of the type of role they hold, an activist type of role or a government type of role, or they've put themselves out there for some type of reason. Now, there are also companies that just by nature of their business, they are attacked in the type of situation we're in right now, when you have, for example, the energy industry right now is under extreme attack because of the situation in Eastern Europe, and the fact that the gas coming out of certain countries is either dwindled or completely cut off and needing to come from alternate sources. So the attackers are trying to intercept and inject themselves into those alternative sources and have an impact upon that from that perspective.
Right. Well, let's get to the central question. what would you recommend to the head of the enterprise IT department when he or she receives a ransom demand? What should happen in the first minutes and following hours?
Yeah, so let's be clear, ransom demands are much different than actual ransom attacks, and they certainly do come, and they come frequently, the ransom demands. So the first thing you do if you get a ransom demand and you're not currently under attack, is it's time to circle the wagons and prepare for the attack. You should first of all not consider it, even if you've got some evidence to prove otherwise, you should not consider it to be a benign threat. You should consider it as a real threat. And if they come at you, for example, and say, on this date at this time, we're going to take you down in a DDoS attack, you can almost be assured that they're going to be a ransomware related DDoS attack that occurs at that given time, even if it's short, even if it's a short burst, maybe an hour long or even 10 minutes long, to prove capabilities. Because when a ransom note is issued, that's exactly what they're going to do. If you ignore them, they're going to try and prove their capabilities. So circle your wagons and make sure all your defenses are in place. If it's a ransom note that is threatening DDoS, then make sure your DDoS protection's in place. If you have none, make sure it gets in place. Then move on down and make sure your patching is in place, the good hygiene type of things. Make sure access controls are in place. And then certainly also reach out to, if you don't already have law enforcement contacts that you can reach out to, then this is a good time for you to reach out and establish those contacts. You can establish them through national entities, which is probably better than local entities, because local entities are either not prepared to handle cyber attacks in most cases, except for in large cities, or it becomes an international issue. Most ransomware situations are international, so you need to go to the national entities like the FBI or Department of Homeland Security with their CISA entity in particular.
Yeah, well, that's great advice. So what are, some of the guidelines of when it does or does not make sense to pay the ransom?
Well, that's always an internal discussion. I would probably say never pay the ransom up front to prevent a ransom attack. But once you've been attacked, once your data is inaccessible either by a DDoS attack that's ransom related, or an actual encryption type of ransom situation, when your data has been encrypted and it's no longer available, then you have to consider that possibility, and you have to consider what it's going to cost you from a number of different perspectives. Is it cheaper for you to pay the ransom and to get the data back, or is it cheaper for you to rebuild systems, restore systems, and muddle through potentially even re-entry of data by data entry people in order to get that data back? So there's a lot of different factors that play into that. But most certainly, one thing you have to consider in this scenario, when you actually have been attacked, when you've been the victim of it, is paying the ransom will not make them go away. Actually, that makes them more emboldened. Typically, when someone has an encryption related ransomware situation, they pay a ransom. The ransom, the people that have received the payment will give you access to a little bit of your data, but what you'll find out is that somehow, and I'm using air quotes, the data is corrupted. And so you have to have additional conversations with them, with the people that have attacked you. And through that, they're learning new information about your organization, new ways to attack you. Not only that, they turn around and sell, much like credit card, when a credit card's been stolen, they turn around and sell that information to other attackers. So your profile goes up when you pay the ransom as well. So there's a lot of different pieces you have to play into that.
Yeah. Well, have you ever seen or maybe share a story where the hackers were the losers in the scenario?
Well, hackers are losers when a company has defenses in place, and those unfortunately are the ones you don't hear about. But I can share a story, for example, that happened here at DataBank. An attacker ransomed or potentially ransomed a customer in December timeframe. They did exactly what I suggested. They circled the wagons. They employed a DDoS protection tool. The ransom to DDoS did occur, but our protections defended against it, and the customer never went down. That's as a result of that implementation of the Radware DDoS protection product. So that is an example, but you don't hear about those kinds of things in the news. And so it's hard to go and find them unless you've experienced them yourself.
Right. And probably a lot of those companies don't want their profile to be larger, or their,
Exactly.
you know what I mean? So they don't want to mention it, right? We
Exactly.
thwarted the attackers.
Yes, because then you run that victory lap, and they come at you with even much more vigor, right?
You're kind of taunting them, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Right. Well, thanks, Mark. As always, you've shared very valuable information, and we appreciate all of your insight.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So for those of you who are listening and like to be notified of the next CISO Corner podcast, and when it's released, just click the link below the video and subscribe to the podcast. And thank you everyone for your time, and we'll see you next time.